Hey, what's up? Silas here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the World Cup. Well, the World Cup's coming up. It's going to be in Russia. It's in a couple of days. I don't know exactly. I'm more of an American football fan than a soccer football fan, but it's a global thing. It's a worldwide thing. It's a big deal for a lot of people. I think Russia is hosting it, and they just hosted the Winter Olympics in Sochi or something. But this is going to be more just about the World Cup, and it's an idea I had of how they could actually host the World Cup in different regions and countries all around the world instead of having this whole issue that they have every couple of years. I think they do it for you have a kind of nomination process for it. There's supposedly a lot of corruption and things like that being involved. I think the next World Cup is being held in Qatar, and there's issues of it being extremely hot. Qatar is in the Middle East. It's in a desert, so people are talking about it being amazingly hot out there. How are they going to actually staff the place? How are they going to have the players playing in this heat? And then they're thinking of moving it to a different time. And then they say, okay, you move it to a different time, and then it's going to coincide with the actual European leagues. And the European leagues are where most of these players play. International players all go to Europe. But I'm also going to be talking about that in a separate video about the way the structure is with the best players going to certain locations and moving around and things like that. For this one, we're going to be talking about the hosting itself of the World Cup. So here we go. So instead of having this situation, as I mentioned, with Qatar being like, what's going on with this thing? Instead of having this thing where the millions and almost billions, I think it's actually billions now, of money that's spent in the whole process of trying to get the nomination, getting the nomination, building the stadiums in certain locations, and then that money goes to waste. Like the recent one that happened in South Africa, that was it last year with South Africa? I think it might have been last year. In the one in South Africa, of course, Africans were extremely happy to have that. A lot of people in sub-Saharan Africa were overjoyed to have this thing. The world was like, yes, Africa has one now, but I have a better idea of how Africa could have one and still maintain the actual quality of these stadiums, of these actual facilities, because what happens, unfortunately, is after these facilities are used, especially in a place like South Africa, where I think the biggest spectator sport in South Africa is rugby, and it's definitely not putting enough people in the seats like you have in, wait, no, it wasn't South Africa, it was Brazil. Sorry, some of you might have already pointed that out during it, or was it? But this is the same issue with Brazil as well. Well, Brazil has a bigger football, soccer playing environment. Yet, even with Brazil, they were not able to completely have all those stadiums actually filled with people and actually populated with being used to the actual level that they were being used during the World Cup. Definitely in South Africa, you're nowhere close to that. Now, Russia, I know Russia is kind of getting up bigger. Recently, I was seeing that they were pulling some older players, like players who are maybe out of their peak, then they move to Russia and they play a couple of years there. I think Didier Drogba played there, or was that Didier Drogba? Was he playing for Daskar Donetsk, which I think was a Turkish team, or he might have played in some team in Russia. So Russia's league might be coming up. I don't know how popular it is in Russia. Can you actually fill these stadiums? Because normally, how many stadiums do you normally build? Maybe 10 stadiums are built for every World Cup. Now you have places like United Kingdom, you have places like Germany, where they already have stadiums. They have big leagues. Italy has a big league, so you already have the stadiums, and you've already had some teams in this situation kind of work together. You've had some countries, I mean, in some situations, kind of work together on certain things. Whether it's a World Cup, whether it's something like the Olympics, they have situations where they work together. I think they've had countries that work together for Olympics. But this is what I'm talking about with the working together. That's the key I'm talking about with somewhere like Africa. Now, I'm here in Nairobi, Kenya. Now, to have Kenya have a World Cup it's ridiculous. I mean, there's a lot of football fans in Kenya. Kenya has a population of about 45 million people. The Kenyan League is coming up. They just had a game this weekend, Gor Mahia and I forget who Gor Mahia was playing. They were playing maybe Stima or something, which is like the power team. But anyway, whoever was going to win this game was actually going to go to the United Kingdom and play Everton, I think. So this was a big deal for them, and there's a massive following of people here in Nairobi, Kenya, in Kisumu, in Mombasa that follow the Premiership more than any other league. And I think there's something to do with the history of the colonialism with the United Kingdom here in Kenya. So, I mean, there's some hard feelings, but it's not that hard of feelings because English is still spoken. Fish and chips is kind of a thing. It's changed to fish na kuku, like fish and chicken. It's the football is a big thing here. It's coming up. The local leagues are coming up. So the stadiums are definitely, you're not going to have a need to build 10 world-class stadiums to actually have the Kenya Premier League playing in it. But what if you had a regional thing? What if you put together Tanzania, whatever it said, Zanzibar, Uganda, Rwanda, you put Kenya in there, you could even throw Somalia in there. You have this regional thing, and then now you can say a situation now, depending on the country, maybe you have 2 or 3 stadiums. You can have a stadium built in Mombasa in the coast city because it's a major city. Like it's a major town, major city, a lot of tourism there. You can have a lot of other events in there, concerts and things like that. You can have one built in Nairobi, which is the capital city here in Kenya. And then you can have one maybe built in Kisumu, which is the second biggest city. I think it's the third biggest city. Mombasa and Kisumu are tying. It's next to Lake Victoria, and that's next to the border of Uganda. Then maybe in Uganda, you can build one in Kampala, which is the capital. Then you can have another one next to Lake Victoria. Then again, you have these situations where there are massive stadiums where you can have different kind of events and things like that and host. There's an airport in Kisumu, there's an airport in Mombasa. Now you can have that kind of situation where you're thinking, okay, where maybe even in Mogadishu you can build one, and then I mean the securing situation, it's an up and I think Somalia is an up and coming country. There's a lot of things coming up, and there's a lot of money being invested in that place. So maybe Mogadishu may be a harder push to actually pull for having one there. But then you can have some in Kigali in Rwanda. You can have some in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. I don't know what other cities in Tanzania or Rwanda have actual airports. In Zanzibar, you can have one stadium by the port. Zanzibar is a tourist town. It's a very touristy island out there. Now, from that kind of situation, you already have enough stadiums, I think, to actually host an actual World Cup in that region. What you do now is the stages, you say, okay, for this stage, these 4 teams that are going to be in the stage of 16, I think, or whatever, they're all going to go to one location, to one country. And they're going to stay there, and they're going to play all their games there. So the travel is not that big of a deal. Then when you get to the group of 8, now you go to one of the major stadiums in the capital cities of those 4 or 5 areas. Then you go to the semifinals, and then now I think this is where you can go to the bidding kind of section, and then you can have kind of a situation where it's like, okay, for these top teams, for these top actual games, the semifinals, the quarterfinals, and the finals themselves, now for that one, the countries themselves start bidding to see who's going to actually do the most here, who's going to do the best, who's going to put together the best package over this time. Or you can even have a round robin. You can have this thing kind of rotate around. Now you have this kind of regional areas type of thing. So you have one World Cup held in Western Europe or just the European countries. Then this kind of situation happens. So it's like, okay, we're going to have what's it called? We're going to have in Germany, we're going to have some teams. We're going to have some teams in the Netherlands. We're going to have some teams in maybe Belgium. Then we're going to have some teams in Turkey. And then for the next round, we're going to have some teams in France. We're going to have some teams in Spain. We're going to have some teams in Portugal. That kind of thing. And then, okay, the finals are going to be in Russia. That kind of situation, I think, would get people kind of moving around those regions more. It would be able to get more people in that area to actually get to the games and things like that. I know travel in Europe is somewhat easier and faster and more expedited than it is here in Africa. But you can have this kind of situations where now the kind of money being spent to actually build up these places in one country and then going to waste is actually done in a different way by being spread around this way. And now these countries kind of just rotate. You don't have the constant people bidding for it, trying to get up there and saying like, hey, who's going to be next, who's going to be whatnot. You just have like the Middle East is going to have one, Africa is going to have one, Sub-Saharan Africa is going to have one, then you can have Northern Africa can be involved with the Middle East, and you can have Europe have one, then you can have South America have one, you could have North America have one, then you can have Asia have one, you can divide it that way. And this way it kind of just moves around. People just know that in the next 4 years, we're going to go here, we're going to have it there. Similar thing I think can be done with the Olympics in some extent, but not so much because the Olympics require certain. Actually, yeah, the same thing can be done with the Olympics probably. You have those same venues, you have those same stadiums, and in this way you're kind of rotating around. Those stadiums are actually built up, they're actually maintained. Since it's not just one country taking on the burden for it, you can have the wealth spread apart and things like that, and then usage of it can be spread around. Have them near airports. That way people can get to them. People can have other events, can have other conferences. The world is getting very international for a lot of things. And I think that can be something coming to the future. What do you guys think of this plan? Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching the video. And I'm going to have a separate video talking about how the World Cup and the Olympics and just sports in general, international sports, can provide us an actual effective mode of understanding how to, or maybe running certain governments and things like this. I discussed it in part in a previous video, the Sunday Over Here series, if you check that out. But anyway, like, share, and subscribe. Links below to the merchandise store. Can help me out on Patreon. Most of all, please let me know what you guys think about this idea and who are you guys supporting for the World Cup, if anyone. Okay, goodbye.